Now, to understand these developments better, I'm now joined by Gareth Porter, American historian and investigative journalist and policy analyst on U.S. foreign and military policy. Mr. Porter, welcome to the program. What is your assessment of the effect Iran's test firing of its mid- and long-range missiles will likely have on the current geopolitical atmosphere?
Well, it appears to me that there is really no particular response in the United States that is politically significant as far as the military confrontation with Iran is concerned. Instead, what you see is Secretary Gates basically using this to justify a completely different policy, essentially, which is this missile shield idea in Europe, which is not really connected with the present confrontation with Iran in any direct sense. The other thing that impressed me about the U.S. response was that William Burns of the State Department actually tried to soft pedal the situation regarding Iran's nuclear program. And he basically downplayed the progress that Iran is making in sharp contrast to the kind of alarming statements that have been made by some in the administration in past months. And of course, I think this underlines the reality, which is that you have here in Washington an administration that is very dysfunctional in the sense that they do not really have a unified policy at all. They're all over the place with regard to the confrontation with Iran.
Iran has time and again stated that it will not engage in conflict with any country unless it is attacked. Do you think the country's missile tests will have any deterrent effect against a possible strike by the United States or Israel?
That depends on the sort of technical questions of how accurate these missiles are and so forth, which I certainly do not have the kind of information that would be required for making that sort of judgment. I think, in effect, that the missile tests are simply a signal by Iran that they are standing firm, rather than actually conveying new information which will have a deterrent effect on the United States or Israel.
Now, Iran conducts 2 or 3 war games every year and fires a number of missiles. Apparently, this time around, the United States is doing a good job of using the timing of the tests to justify its push for deploying its missile defense shield in Eastern Europe.
Well, that's true. But of course, in this case, Iran meant for this set of tests to actually be a signal directly related to the threats that have recently come, particularly from Israel. So, I mean, their effort was really to have an impact directly on the Israelis and the Americans, rather than on the European situation.
And finally, Mr. Porter, a senior U.S. State Department official has described the test launching of missiles by Iran as provocative. We did not hear the same about Israel's recent war games. Why is that?
Well, the U.S. government, of course, always tries to take advantage of every situation to criticize the opponent in a way that will be to its advantage. In this case, not only was this test called provocative, but in the case of the National Security Council spokesperson, Jandro, the statement was made that these tests were actually a violation of Security Council resolutions, which is really a very creative interpretation of those resolutions. As we know, the resolutions are aimed at trying to punish Iran by trying to curb their missile program. But in no sense, of course, do the Security Council resolutions actually establish a rule against ballistic missiles. And so this is yet another case of the administration doing what it does best, which is to use every opportunity to create an exaggerated notion of the violations of its foe, in this case, Iran.
Gareth Porter, American historian and investigative journalist, many thanks for joining us.